Illinois lawmakers looking to curb domestic violence. The renewed focus comes after what police are calling a murder-suicide last week in DuPage County. It involved a man on pretrial release after domestic violence arrest. Right now, people charged with domestic violence are presumed to be released while awaiting trial. They can be held, but the prosecutor has to petition the judge and prove the person is too dangerous to remain on the streets. A bill from Senate Minority Leader John Curran would change that.
We want to get serious about domestic violence, domestic abusers, those that are causing bodily harm to women and children, the victims of domestic violence. We need to flip that presumption. My legislation is very simple in nature. The presumption will be flipped.
Some Democrats are renewing their push to pass Karina's bill. It would require police to seize someone's weapons when they're given a court order to surrender their FOID card.